Emma Heming Willis, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. A lot to talk about. Not all of it fun, obviously. And actually, I'm going to start with the unfun stuff because I'd be interested in having you take us back to the day of your husband's diagnosis, because I understand, and you've written about this, that's how I came to understand it, that you get this devastating diagnosis and then they just give you a pamphlet.
Yeah, received Bruce's diagnosis, and we left without a roadmap, without any kind of support. There was obviously no cure, no treatment. It was just to check back in a couple months. It was pretty traumatic.
Can you say a little bit more about what the diagnosis was and is?
Sure. So Bruce was diagnosed with PPA, which is primary progressive aphasia, which is a subtype of FTD, which is frontotemporal dementia. FTD is the most common form of dementia for people under the age of 60. It affects your front part of your brain and also your temporal lobes. And, there are different subtypes. So for FTD, it can affect behavior, it could affect language, and also movement. So for Bruce, it was language. Which is where the primary progressive aphasia comes into play. So, for us, I started noticing just stuttering coming back and not really understanding why that was happening and not really able to put two and two together to ever think that my husband was showing symptoms of a young onset dementia.
How old was he when he got the diagnosis?
That diagnosis came in 2022. He's 70 now. Do the math.
67.
There you go. Yeah. 67.
Yeah, pretty young to get a devastating diagnosis like that.
So young.
I just have to imagine, this just seems like a statement of the obvious, but not in your life plan.
No, and not in his.
Yeah.
It was very much a curveball, so to speak. Never in my wildest dreams would I imagine someone who so well read and, his whole life was built on speaking and just being so quick-witted that would slowly be taken from him. FTD it's a truly unkind disease. It's an unkind disease.
You mentioned his stutter came back. Had he had a stutter as a younger person?
Yeah. So until Bruce went to college, he had a severe stutter. And when he went into college, there was a theater teacher that had approached him and said, I can help you with that. And what he realized is that when he started to go to theater, he would be able to memorize these scripts, monologues, and be able to recite them without stuttering. And I think that was one of the reasons why Bruce started to act, because he realized that he could say these words and be able to just talk fluidly. Mm-hmm. And then over the years, it's not that he was never without his stutter. He just knew how to navigate how to speak with a stutter. And then, in his 60s, it started to come back.
So we've been talking a little bit about Bruce's experience. He's not here to talk about it, but so I'd like to focus more on you. Now, I was talking to my mother last night. She is married to my dad, who has dementia, and she was talking about how sad it is for her to watch what he's become, because he was this brilliant guy and physician, Harvard Medical School professor and physician, and now it's very different. You're nodding your head, so I'm just imagining that this rings true for you.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that about your father. Again, it's it is really hard to watch someone that you love, that you have known one way, to start to lose pieces of themselves. That has been the hardest experience, I think, for me. This is a very slow yet progressive disease. And to watch things just be taken and something else gets taken. So where FTD is a very unkind, any form of dementia is horrific.
I guess I've come to look at, I don't know if this will land for you, but I've come to look at it, vis-a-vis my own father, and pretty much I attempt to apply this to everything in my life. Like, you use the phrase taken, but it's through a Buddhist lens, none of it's ours anyway. It's all just impermanent arising. All these things that we think of as ours, our ability to speak with a sense of humor, our ability to walk, our ability to make plans. Like, it's all, I sometimes think of us as like spinning tops. The top is inanimate until you spin it. And then we're, at our peak of our game when we're spinning it at high velocity, and then we're built to tumble. So I just yammered a little bit there. How does all that go down with you?
It doesn't. I hear it in theory, but we are living this right now. This isn't in hindsight. This is me having a front row seat to my husband and his disease. And it is painful. It has never not been painful for me to watch that. Not, for me, our family, our people I love, people who, Bruce is so beloved. It's painful for them too.
Yeah.
He's no longer acting. And I think this is how he's spending his retirement.
Yeah.
In his disease.
Yeah. To be clear, I don't think I probably miscommunicated there. It's not that the Buddhist view is a recipe for, at least for the unenlightened, like that's all of us. It's not necessarily a recipe for the alleviation of pain. It's still painful, but it's the truth. It's the truth. This is what we're born into. These bodies that are going to decompensate. Sure.
And I think for me, it has been about learning to, or deciding to accept what has happened. So I am not constantly just living in the grief and the sadness of it, but also being able to meet Bruce where he is at, to be upset and sad about what has been taken from him, but what has also come into our lives because of it. So much love, so much compassion, so much patience. For me, just being able to write a book for care partners, something that I never expected that I would be able or needed or wanted to do, but it's just everything that has come out of it. There has been so much beauty in it as well. So you can't have one without the other. And I have learned how to balance this. So I'm not just in the depths of the grief and sadness all the time, but also how to bring in the joy that is there. We have plenty of joy in our lives, even though this is incredibly hard for us to.
Let me go back to the days and weeks after you're handed this diagnosis along with the pamphlet. My understanding is you kind of went into full bore, to use your term, care partner mode for an extended period of time and kind of ground yourself into dust a little bit. Am I describing this with some degree of accuracy?
Yeah, I when we went in for that diagnosis appointment, I did not think that we were walking out with an FTD diagnosis. I had heard about different forms of dementia, but I had remembered, sort of along the way, doctors would tell me about FTD and they would say, oh boy, that's the one that you don't want. And that was the one that we received. And for a while there, you really had to kind of pick me up from the ground during that time. I wanted just to make sure that Bruce was protected during that time as well, and about trying to keep it sort of just within our family. And how are we going to navigate this just with us? And what I started to realize was that the smoke and mirrors of it all was becoming impossible because I wasn't able to really fully embrace the diagnosis, which meant that I wasn't able to go out to get the right support for us because I was so nervous that his diagnosis would get out to the public when we weren't ready for that. We weren't really thinking about that at that time. We were, but it wasn't fully developed in our heads about how we were going to navigate this, not just within our family, but then how to take this public. Then realizing that the best thing that we could do was to talk about it and release our family statement about Bruce's FTD diagnosis. And from that, then I went full force and was able to put all the support around our family with different experts and specialists to really help me best support Bruce and our two young children and myself.
In your book, you say, and I think this is pretty much verbatim, one of the most surprising truths of caregiving is that the most important thing you can do for your loved one is to take care of yourself. Just say a little bit about why that is so surprising, and apparently it was quite counterintuitive for you in those early days.
Yeah, I was burning the candle at both ends. When Bruce received his FTD diagnosis, our two young girls, they were 8 and 10 at the time. So I was very much I still am. They're now 13 and 11. So, very much in mom mode and, caring for Bruce and a business owner and a daughter and all of these things, and just really putting myself last on the list, which meant I wasn't going to see my doctor, wasn't eating properly. I wasn't exercising. I wasn't doing anything to care for myself. My wake-up call was having a conversation with Bruce's neurologist, who told me about the statistics of care partners dying before the person that they're caring for.
Wow.
And she had said to me, the way you are going, you could become one of these statistics. And I thought, okay, no, that's not going to happen. And that was when I really realized that I needed to put myself first on that list, because in order to care for the people around me, I had to care for myself so that I could be able to show up for them, make rational decisions on everyone's behalf. And it's hard. It's very hard for caregivers to hear that because they think, how can I do that? But it is absolutely vital. And we don't care for ourselves, we can't possibly continue to care for the person that we love.
So you were bumping up against what is, in my view, one of the most pernicious and damaging misconceptions, which is that self-care, for lack of a better term, is self-indulgent.
Yeah, I think also this idea that when we care for ourselves as caregivers, we deal with so much guilt. Our person has it worse than we do. Why should we be putting ourselves first before them? But like this whole ecosystem of care that we are trying to set up just doesn't work if the caregiver is not cared for. And it's not just me saying this. By writing this book, I think being able to bring in, I think the beauty of this book are the specialists and the experts that I have brought in. And that is the message that they keep saying over and over again, is that you must care for the caregiver.
Yeah, there are a bunch of cliches here, but they're apt. You can't pour from an empty cup, or put your own oxygen mask on first, et cetera, et cetera. And it is counterintuitive, but once you state it clearly, it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, I needed the permission from Bruce's neurologist to really, so that I could understand that I wasn't a failure, and that it was okay for me to look after myself, and that I needed to. And my hope is that with this book that I have written, that the caregiver will hear that over and over and over again, and that it gives them the permission that they need to be able to really start reframing and rethinking about this idea of care and what care looks like, and that putting yourself first, it's not selfish, it's self-preserving.
we're going to dive into your practical tips quite deeply. But before we get into that, a couple sort of overarching points I want to see if we can get on the same page with. First, you wrote the book for caregivers, but not everybody listening to this show will be caregivers. And I think the broader point that the broader frame that I'd like to put on it, if you're cool with it, is this message of, it's okay to take care of yourself. Like, everybody needs to hear that, because so many of us do labor under the delusion that it's somehow self-indulgent to, do the basics.
And not everyone are caregivers that are listening to your podcast, for sure. But what they might not like to hear is that at some point in our lives, we will give care to someone, or we might need care ourselves. So I think that the conversation of care, even if you're not a caregiver, I think it's important to have it on your radar, because I know it was not on my radar. I did not think that in my, mid to late 40s, I would becoming a caregiver to my husband. I did not know that. Dementia was not in my world. It wasn't in my realm. Caregiving wasn't even a thought for me until it was. And I hope that this book and this conversation about care is thought about. I feel like we're so allergic to this idea of care and death and grief, but I think it's very important to talk about it. And, now that I know what this looks like, I have a very sort of detailed care plan for myself, so that at some point in my life when I will need care, the burden will not be put on my children to make absolutely every decision on my behalf. I'm going to try and make it a little bit easier for them. So I know that wasn't where you were going with your question, but I just wanted to put that out there, because care will happen to us at some point in our lives.
Yeah, well, it's actually going to be my second question. So it's not off topic at all. It's something I've thought about quite a bit, this question of care. I will say that I would include parenting in care, and you were a parent when this happened. So it's not like you had no history with caregiving. But obviously, beginning of life is different in lots of meaningful ways from the other end of the spectrum. Just to say a little bit about how I think about this, I didn't think about this at all. I mean, and was not socialized to think about this. I mean, I'm 54. I don't think Gen X guys grew up thinking about this stuff. I certainly didn't. And then, so the first crack in the armor was having a kid, and then watching my parents get sick. It's just, and having to lean in and take care of them. And I think, we're in this era. I think about this a lot. We're in this era of optimization where people are trying to, pull every lever to get better at life, to get healthier, and I actually think learning how to take care of other people, which is not unrelated to learning how to take care of yourself, is a skill that we should all develop. First of all, because it's inevitable, but also done right. And I think this is a big message in your book. Done right, it enhances your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely enhanced my life. I've learned so much in the process of becoming a care partner to Bruce, things that I never thought that I would know or need to know or learn. And it has been truly very eye-opening for me. As crazy as this sounds, what a gift I've been given. I have grown. I've probably already said that, but I have grown so much in this process in ways that I never imagined. Being able to use my voice to advocate for my husband, challenge doctors. That wasn't me. Very shy, very meek in certain respects, and just learning how to use my voice to help him, help our family, has been extremely empowering for me.
Okay, so let's get back. First of all, it's really cool to hear that, actually. So let's get back though to some of the specific pieces of advice you're delivering in this book, in terms of how to take care of yourself. And again, I'll just say that these are pieces of advice that are applicable to caregivers and really anybody. But you're writing it, of course, within the context of caregiving. So one of the first pieces of advice is to build community and connection. Mm-hmm. This can sound like kind of an empty bromide, like a community connection. They can be rendered as cliches, but you're talking about it in a very concrete and practical way. So can you say more about what you mean by this?
Yeah, I was extremely isolated during sort of the lead up to Bruce's diagnosis. When he was diagnosed, there wasn't really anyone that I knew that was dealing with a husband who was suffering from a young onset dementia while raising 2 young children. There was absolutely nobody that I could connect to, and I felt extremely alone and so isolated. And it wasn't until we were able to talk about Bruce's diagnosis openly, where then I was able to really figure out who my community is and who I could speak to. And, just prior to that, there was a friend of mine, actually Bruce's really close friend, who had introduced me to a woman, Franny, whose husband had young onset Alzheimer's. His name was Paul. And Franny and I started talking and really connected. We were able to talk about feelings and emotions that I had never spoken to anyone about. And, she would sit there and just look at me and say, I get it, Emma, or yes, me too, or that I experienced that as well. And there was nothing better to me than just being with someone, finding that person, someone within this community that really understood what I was experiencing. So community, connection within this space where caregivers are so alone and so isolated is extremely important.
One of the expressions I use a lot, I didn't coin this phrase, but I think it's apropos in this context, never worry alone.
Since connecting with Franny, I've really been able to sort of embed myself into the FTD community. And, I go to conferences and different types of meetups, and I get to be with other people who they just look at me, they put their hand on my shoulder, and they just get it. They just get me, and we get each other, and words don't really need to be exchanged. It could just be a hug, someone just squeezing your hand. There is so much beauty in that. And that is the other side of the grief, is just really feeling this human connection with other people is something that I've never felt before in this capacity of like community, connection, like real connection. It doesn't matter that my husband is Bruce Willis. This is just real life that is happening. A spouse to another spouse, to be able to just connect and be, it is profound.
We live in a really isolated era. People are lonely, and I hear from people all the time, when we talk on the show about the importance of community, people sometimes even get annoyed, like, what? How do you create community? What thoughts do you have on that score?
Yeah, I wasn't a part of a community prior to this. So when you don't know where you belong, or you don't have that, that real connection to something, I could kind of understand that. I was probably there sort of floating around, having some friends, this, that, and the other. But for me now, my life has taken such a turn and has landed me into a community, an actual community with like-minded people that are having the same experience that I'm having. It has been just an incredible experience for me to find that. But I didn't have that before. I was probably another one of others just floating, trying to figure out what is that? What does that mean? But I have found it.
Another piece of advice from in your book is to make time for yourself. Now, we touched on this a little bit, but very practically, given the demands of being a caregiver, not only to your husband, but to your children, how how do you find that time?
I schedule it. I have a calendar. I mean, we put everything into our calendar, from doctor's appointments to meetings and if I don't schedule some make time moments for myself, it will not happen. Again, this idea of self-care, I think, is a little watered down at this point. And for me, what just felt more actionable was this idea of making time. Like, what do I want to make time for? What are the things that actually feed my soul? When I think of self-care, I think of I feel like the beauty industry has kind of taken control of it in a certain respect. And if that's what rocks your boat, that's great. If it's a mask on your face or a bubble bath or whatever that is, that's great. But for me, it's like I just needed something that felt a little more actionable to me. So what are the things that are like my own type of meditation? And for me, it was like gardening. I love being in my garden. I love weeding. I love planting. I love being able to water these plants, watch them grow, because that feels very much in my control. It's just finding these moments. It's just like, and simple, right? Like getting outside to just feel the sun on your face and the breeze in your hair. Because for so long, I was numb to all of that. I did not feel it. I wasn't looking for it. And now I just realize how important these like make time moments are for myself. That doesn't have to be big and grand. It's really can be very simple, but it's really just tapping into, especially as caregivers, we lose ourselves so much in the process. And there came a point where I didn't know what made me anymore. And I really needed to do a bit of soul searching to figure that out. What were the things that made me feel like myself again? And it's really about being in nature, being outside, tapping into the birds chirping, the wind in the trees. Just helps just ground me. It really helps ground me.
So the way you're describing it sounds actually in the zone of doability. Like the putting an hour to go in the garden is different from I'm going to run a triathlon.
Yeah. I mean, why did I start gardening? Because it kept me close to home, where I could be outside and know that I could still be a caregiver if something was happening inside our house with our 2 children and my husband. Again, it was just like, what can I do that can just get me out of my role for a little bit? And I found that with gardening and being able to do maintenance around our house. I had this bench that was just worn down. And I learned that I needed to get this certain thing to scrub it down. And then I was able to seal it. And, but I was just outside our house. So I was able to do that and just disconnect a little bit. Again, not these like monumental make time moments of like, I'm going to go run a triathlon and you're not going to see me for hours and hours. It's just not possible as a caregiver. But what is finding simple things that feed your soul. And let me tell you, I love looking at this bench now. It's beautiful. And I did it. Like I was able to do that in the midst of the craziness of our lives.
And then one of the things you're touching on here is, and this is a big problem that people face, whether they're caregivers or not, no matter what your schedule is, a lot of people find it difficult not only to make the time, but to, even if you have the time, to stay at something. And all of the research around habit formation or human behavior change points to the magic bullet being starting small. And that's exactly what you did. And it just makes it feel doable.
Yes. And, I think there's this thing that for caregivers, like they don't have support. There are so many people out there that are doing this on their own. So for them, this idea of making time is really hard, even if it's to get out for a walk for 10 minutes. Who's going to watch their loved one? Bringing in support is really important. I think the mistake that caregivers make, and it's not just me saying this is every expert in this book that's saying it too, is that we wait too long to ask for help. We wait too long to bring in the support. And we need to be able to bring in that support so that we can just make time for ourselves. And if that is gardening, if it is just going to your annual doctor's appointment or getting your mammogram done or something, we need to be able to bring in that support so that we can make time for us as caregivers to care for ourselves. so that we can continue to care for the person that we love.
So that is another of the specific pieces of advice in the book, which is bringing in help. And you take a run at this head on in the book, because you've had people say to you, well, you're married to Bruce Willis. Of course you have the money to bring in help, but I don't have that money. And you address this head on and point out that there are cost-effective ways to do this. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Caregiving is not a solo mission, and it shouldn't be expected that it should be. And I think that is the common misconception, is that when you're, and I was one of those people, right? When Bruce was diagnosed and as I became a care partner, I didn't think that anyone else could care for him the way that I could. I wanted to be in control of all of that. And I did not want to have anyone else be a part of his care. But it is so important that early on that we start asking for help, and to know that it's okay to ask for help, that we are not failing the person that we love because we need support. I will tell you, caring for someone with dementia, it takes a team of people. It takes a team, and people are doing this solo. And my hope is also that in this book, that family and friends can hear that there is a need for support, and being able to bring people in sooner than later is better for everyone. Better for the person you're caring for, better for yourself, and for your family and friends to be able to be a part of that care too.
Obviously, health insurance is a complicated subject in America right now, but my understanding is that many people are eligible for, a visiting nurse service or, home health aid, to be there a couple hours a day, and you don't need to be a Hollywood celebrity or married to one to access these services.
Yes, they are. But it's very hard. It is very hard to get those services. The cost of care is extremely expensive, and you have to be a Hollywood movie star to be able to afford it. And, it's not, I feel the caregivers that we have, they deserve absolutely every single cent, if not more. But the average American cannot afford that. But yes, I mean, there are services, but I would say what's really helpful is your family and your friends coming in and stepping up to help care.
So you have a whole section about do's and don'ts for family and friends, because as you point out, family and friends are incredibly valuable, and, they can say some annoying shit sometimes.
Yes. I do feel that your friends and family are not on the front line. They don't really they don't really have much of a say of how you are caring for your person. I think that if you can bring them into the fold and be a part of your care, then that's different. But yeah, I've written a whole section for the caregiver to be able to pass on to a friend, family member, of the do's and don'ts of how to help and how not to help. So, the do's, I would say, can be very simple. What I think is beneficial is that the caregiver has to do a little bit of work and put some thought into a list of things that they do, maybe within the day, a week, within a month, that they can then compile into a list and be able to pass on to a family or a friend. It could be, will you please put gas in my car every week and take it to get washed? Can you please come sit with my loved one while they nap, or, just for an hour so I can get out? Can you deliver grocery stores? Can you deliver groceries to our door? Is there a food train, where someone can deliver a lasagna once a week? These are very simple, actionable things, because what you'll hear from people is like, if there's anything you need, let me know. Mm-hmm. And instead of that, well, actually, yes, here are some things, because the caregiver, it's so easy for them to be like, okay, thank you so much. No, it's okay. I got it. They don't have it. They don't have it all. I've put together a really beautiful, kind list of ways, actionable ways that people can actually help. So when you hear there's anything you need, let me know. Caregiver will be like, oh, great. Here's some things I need.
So many of us, I think probably all of us, have been in situations where we have a friend or a family member who is going through something awful and find ourselves reflexively saying those words. What can I do to help? If there's anything you need, et cetera, et cetera. Are there better words that we can utter to a friend or a loved one who's in crisis that might be more practical and helpful rather than the kind of broad, let me know if I can help?
I mean, I'm just looking at this on the don't list, and I say, what would be really lovely is if someone says, I'm here for you no matter what. You're not alone in this. And I know this isn't easy, but you're showing up with so much love and strength. And I feel also, instead of just this idea of like, well, just let me know if there's anything I can do, just do. When I hear that a friend of mine is going through a hard time, whatever it might be, I just do what I feel is right in my heart and not have to put this on them to figure out what they need in this time. Let's go. I've arranged for us to go have a lunch, or I'm going to pick you up if you're available at 10 and we're going to go for a walk and I'll bring coffee. I just think like, let's just do. Let's not just put this sort of open-ended sort of idea of like, if there's anything you need, I'm here. Just show up. Just actually show up.
It's a balance, though, because you don't want to show up in a way that's intrusive.
You can give them 3 options. Here are 3 options for you so that the caregiver doesn't have to think of what they need at that moment. Do any of these 3 things work for you? I'll pick your kids up from school and take them to dinner. Or if you would be up for a walk at 10 a.m., I'll bring coffee. Here's another option. Just give the options so that the caregiver can be like, okay, this is something that can work for me. Or the caregiver will say, you know what, this isn't happening for me right now. Can you reach back out in a week or 2 and we can revisit this? I just want like action. I don't want this just free floating idea anymore for caregivers need support. They are unseen, they are unsupported, and they need help.
Amen. What are the other don'ts?
I don't like when people tell me, you've got this. I don't like that don't. I really hate that don't.
Yeah.
Oh, you've got this. And I'm like, but do I? Because I don't really feel like I do. I feel like I'm making a lot of this stuff up on the fly. I would prefer people don't say that.
Some of the other don'ts are don't offer unsolicited advice or new treatments without doing the legwork. Don't mention cures for conditions the person doesn't have. And don't say that the loved one, quote unquote, seems fine.
Yes, all of those are don'ts. Everyone has a cure, a reversal, a treatment. I appreciate that. But a lot of people don't understand FTD and that there actually is no treatment and there is no cure for it. And, a lot of people have solutions for you without doing any kind of research or have any kind of grasp or understanding about what these diseases are and how it moves through a person. So I don't really like when people are coming to you and giving you, well, have you tried this? Are you doing that? Da, 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 da. It's like, I've been there, done that, done it all. Again, what I really need, the support that I really need is for you to drop some groceries off for me or go pick up the prescription. That's where you can put your energy. Or go do the legwork. Go figure out what this is and bring me the paperwork on it. Just do. Again, just do. These just ideas. Oh, I just heard that there's a new drug for Alzheimer's. And I'm like, well, Bruce doesn't have Alzheimer's. He has FTD.
Right.
Right. It all comes from a place of love, I'm sure. But as a caregiver who has heard so many things, I think people are just putting their energy in the wrong area.
No, this is very helpful because I think we all run into these situations. Another don't that's actually a do is don't give up on offering invitations, even if declined. As caregivers, we still appreciate feeling included.
Yeah. I mean, for so long, I wasn't accepting invitations. And at some point, like the invitations stopped coming, but there was a reason for that. It was because I wasn't being fully honest about what was happening to my husband. So I would decline offers. And what I should have done was been honest, because I think that then there became this idea that I just didn't want to show up anymore. I wasn't a part of my certain friend group or whatever it is. I think it's very important to be honest with the people around you, and that when they're asking you they're inviting you someplace, you can tell them the reason why this is hard for you right now to leave because of whatever it is that you are going through with your loved one. But again, if it takes a lot of energy to accept invitations when you're a caregiver, because you're so spent, but you don't want to not be included. So I think it's still really lovely to be able to get invites from friends, and I decline a lot of them still, but they understand why. But I do try and make sure that I say yes to one or two every once in a while, so I don't isolate myself and be a human in this world.
Yeah, saying yes is another form of self-care sometimes.
Connection, right? Just being able to connect with someone else. And you can put a boundary in place if you feel like you just want to see someone and not talk about your person that you're caring for. And, just say, well, yes, we can talk about it for 5 minutes, but then I'd like to not talk about it and just talk about anything else.
One of the other big practical sessions in the book is about expecting an array of emotions. You talk about a lot of emotions, and I want to go through them. But one of them is a kind of a grief, and it's an interesting grief because the person's still here, but you're kind of grieving the gradual loss of them in real time, and you're grieving the loss of the life that you thought you were going to have.
Yeah. This is called ambiguous loss, and this was coined by Dr. Pauline Boss. When you're dealing with ambiguous loss in dementia, it's that the person is still physically here, but psychologically not. So you are grieving someone that is still alive, which is hard. It's very hard to do that in real time.
You had an idea that your life was going to go a certain way. You were going to raise children with this, seemingly healthy guy in his mid to late 60s. And so you have to grieve the life that wasn't.
I don't think I fully wrapped my head around all of that yet. I am in talk therapy, which has been very important for me to be able to get these array of emotions that I do feel, which is not just grief and sadness. I have many other emotions. Yeah, again, we are walking this journey, and I think sometimes I haven't really fully mourned everything yet. It's a process. But yes, of course, we had our lives sort of mapped out. We knew what we wanted to do. We were going to, travel with our kids. We had all these things that we had planned, and it's just gone. It's just that page has been ripped out, and it's starting new and with new different ideas for us.
You also talk quite a bit about dealing with fear. What did you learn about dealing with fear?
I'm a very fearful person. I'm very fear-based. So it's really interesting to me that this has become, something that is been so hard to walk through, has now just sort of been embedded and so a part of my life that I've had to sort of deal with all of it head on.
You include some tips that you got from the therapist Kathleen Murphy that are really helpful in the moment when fear or anxiety are predominant. Can you walk us through what you do when you're having one of these freak out moments?
Yes, absolutely. So Kathleen, who is a huge fan of yours, actually, Dan.
Oh, thanks.
She would always bring you up in a lot of our therapy sessions. But, she does this thing that she is told me to do is that when I am experiencing fear, there's a couple things she's told me to do, but one is just to wrap my arms around myself and just take a minute and close my eyes and just acknowledge the feeling and not to skirt by it or act as if it's not there. It's just to settle into the moment. And usually what I realize is that when I am having a moment of fear or anxiety, it's really just my head that's kind of getting in the way of everything, as opposed to something really scary or something that I should be very fearful of happening. So for me, it's very helpful. I just acknowledge my feeling. If it's fear, if it's grief, if it's anger, whatever it is, just to be there and acknowledge it. Another thing that she has taught me about, stay here, don't go there. I can be swirling in my thoughts, and I'm a very anxious person, and I can just let my thoughts get the best of me. And I have an alarm set on my iPhone, my watch, that goes off 4 times a day that reminds me to just stay here and don't go there, so that when I hear it go off, I then just get out of my head, which is just I'm constantly thinking of things, and it just kind of silences me for a second and brings me back into my body. And I start to feel the ground beneath my feet, and just this feeling comes over me of like, no, just be here, be in the moment. You're driving your car. You are going from point A to point B. Like, just be here. Don't be thinking about all the things that might happen, should be happening, aren't happening. So this idea of just stay here in the moment. Don't continue to go there to those crazy ass thoughts that I'm always having in my mind.
On the giving yourself a hug thing, I just to say that when I first heard about things like that, putting your hand in your heart, giving yourself a hug, just going back to my Gen X male upbringing, I was not down with that shit at all.
No, I wasn't either.
But there's a ton of science to show that it's really good for you and really helps. It can bring about some meaningful physiological and psychological responses. And so I do it, like I have claustrophobia. I've talked about this before. When I get on a plane, often I'm really nervous. And so, yeah, I'll just put my hand on my chest. And yeah, nobody has to see, nobody knows what I'm doing. Put my hand on my chest and I'm just telling myself, I got this. It's very helpful.
Especially, I think, for people, for myself, I'll speak for myself, who really deals with such an amount of anxiety. And I normally feel very disconnected or outside my body. The hug, the wrapping my arms around me, or just the putting my hand to my chest, there is something very grounding about it. And I remember when I first heard, I think I even wrote it in the book, like, I know this sounds insane, but just give it a try. Just give it a shot. Because it is helpful. And then the minute I take my hand away from my heart, I'm off to the races again. So
yeah, but at least you got a break.
At least I got a break. It's not healthy to be in a state of anxiousness all the time. I know that.
A couple of other emotions that you talk about: empathic distress. It has to suck to see someone I know what it's like. To see someone you love in pain is awful.
Yeah. Thankfully, Bruce is not in pain, which I'm very grateful about. I used to do, and I have to be very conscious about it, is that I need to get myself out of Bruce's body, because I think about, what is he thinking? What is he feeling? What is, and as caregivers, I think we do that because we have to, especially for someone with PPA who has a hard time communicating. I have to really actually go into Bruce's body to sort of figure out, is he okay? Like, what are the signs? Does it seem to me like his neck is hurting? Is his back off? You are just constantly having to be that person. But it is not healthy for me to project what I think he might be feeling. And I think a lot of people that I know who are caregivers to someone with dementia, it is so easy to get lost in our people. But it's been really helpful and important for me just to kind of be able to just get back into myself And sometimes when I realize that I'm getting into this distress, that I put this kind of bubble around myself. I imagine this bubble that I am in that can kind of just help shield me so that I can really tend to Bruce and his needs from a place of sanity, so I can really see what is real and what is not. And that has been very helpful for me. That was another really great pointer from my therapist, Kathleen.
Shout out to Kathleen. So we've just talked about a bunch of difficult emotions, grief, fear, empathic distress. All of that can add up to trauma. And one of the things that there are a couple tools that you write about as being helpful for you. One, actually, I hadn't heard of either of these. I think these are two different tools, but you'll tell me if I'm wrong here. One is called Purge Emotional Writing, and the second is called Give Yourself 30. Maybe they're the same thing, but can you talk about whatever I've just referred to?
Yeah, different. So Patty Davis, the daughter of former and the late President Ronald Reagan, taught me about giving yourself 30, that you can be in any emotion that you want to be in, if it's anger, grief, whatever it is, for 30 minutes. And then you have to move on. So you set a timer, you have these emotions, and you get into it. So whatever it is that you're feeling, go for it. But after 30 minutes, you need to bring yourself out of it, because it is not healthy to stay in the moments of anger or resentment or whatever that might be. So I've loved that, where it's like I could really, it just gives you permission to really feel it, but not to remain there all day. It's just, you have to get back into life. So that is a Give Yourself 30. And the Pew 12 was taught to me by a really wonderful doctor, Dr. Sadecki, who talked to me about, it's Purging Emotional Writing. That's the Pew 12. And it's just about writing for 12 minutes. You set a timer and you write about anything that you might be feeling. You are not allowed to edit this. If you have not typos, because this is about taking a pen to paper. So you just write and you write and you write, and you don't have to read it back. You just get whatever it is that you're thinking, feeling. It's like a stream of consciousness that you get onto a piece of paper. And then he likes to burn the paper, because I am so fear-based. My mind goes to I burn this paper. I don't burn the paper. I just crumble it up, kind of shred it up a little bit. And that's what I do. But yes, so there's a disclaimer on there. I don't know about burning the paper, but okay. But yeah, it's just about a stream of consciousness. I know a lot of people, they write, they journal. And I know for me, writing this book was very healing. I know that journaling is very healing for me. And I know that this Pew 12 of writing 12 minutes every day just to get whatever I am feeling out is my form of self-therapy.
Okay, that actually brings me to the last big practical area I wanted to discuss with you, which is about reframing. Reframing, when shitty things happen to us, how can we reframe it? And I think one of the reframes you list in the book picks up on just what you were saying right there. And it's about turning pain into purpose.
Yeah. I mean, the reframe is not about this toxic positivity. For me, what I realized is that when Bruce was diagnosed and, speaking to the doctor about the statistics, and then really just learning how to sort of bring parts of my life back, I knew that I didn't want Bruce's disease to take our whole family out. That was sort of started this idea of the reframe for me, of feeling the immense sadness and grief, but also having room for the beauty and the light that I spoke to you about, earlier on, that this is a terrible thing to walk through. But again, there's been so much beauty that has come from it. And what I have realized is that I needed to make sense of what was happening. So being able to turn my pain into something that was actionable, like being able to just share more so that others don't feel as alone. For me to be able to raise awareness about FTD, that has been the reframe for me as well. I think it's helped people to hopefully get to a diagnosis earlier. I think that is really important as well. Yeah, it's just this reframe of just understanding that it's not all dark. It is not all terrible. And in those early years, it was. And it was only that. But I think what I have realized and what I want other caregivers to know if they are just starting on this journey is like, sorry, it's that there is beauty on the other side of it. And I didn't realize that early on because no one told me that. So I just want others to know that is there, and it will come at some point. And just to know that. Just to know that you will see as a caregiver how much you grow and how much you can love and just what a superpower it is. And I didn't know that when I walked out of that doctor's office with Bruce with that diagnosis. It was just really so one note. That is the reframe of just being able to walk alongside of it. We are not through this journey. We are still on this journey. I'm able to walk alongside it now, which I never thought I would be able to in a million years, but I have. We have as a family.
It's such a useful, powerful reframe that whatever we're going through, no matter how awful it is, the awful just isn't the whole picture.
Again, I didn't know that early on. And I wish someone would have told me that. I just thought like our life was just going to be awful. But I'm so happy that it is not. It is not. We share so much joy. There's so much laughter in our home.
There are some other really useful reframes in your book. One of them, I want to go through a few of them, but one of them is that this is an opportunity for your whole family to learn and grow. I mean, one of the key concepts, both in modern psychological science and in ancient Buddhism, is that compassion is a skill that you can train in, and that the better you get at it, interestingly, the happier you get, even if you're in an awful situation. And so it seems to me like there's a lot of learning and growing that can happen for the whole family in the midst of this very difficult situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is where we're at. And not just for compassion for Bruce and what he's going through, but I have so much more. I hold so much more compassion for just people in general. I'm able to hold so much more space for others and what they're navigating. I love that. I love the connection that I have now with others that is much deeper than I've ever had in my life. And it took having to going through something that feels terrible and very hard to here I am, much more compassionate, much more patient, much more loving, much more accepting.
Yeah, it's one of the, just to put a fine point on it, one of the reframes that you list in the book is viewing caregiving as transformative. And I know I've been, banging on this drum since the beginning of the interview. And it's probably honestly because I'm talking to I'm 54 now. In some ways, most of the content I create is trying to reach the 35-year-old version of myself who definitely had his head up his ass in so many ways. And it wasn't, as I said earlier, was not thinking about caregiving. It was not on my radar, but of course it's inevitable. And if you're gonna try to optimize for stuff, this is the thing to optimize for, because if you want to put it in that kind of lens, which I think is what speaks to a lot of people in our culture, like why pay any attention to this if it isn't going to have some sort of benefit that shows up on my Apple Watch health metrics? Well, compassion is correlated to happiness and health, higher levels of life satisfaction. It's good for you. We see this at the level of the brain and the nervous system generally. And so, it's why we should, whether we've got a sick loved one or not, we should be volunteering in hospices. We should be building this muscle because it's good for you.
Yeah. I love how you've just broken that down, because it's, I'm again in the caregiving moment and role. So I'm not always, I don't always have that bird's eye view of that, and especially about compassion. But everything that you just said, Dan, is absolutely right. I think, like helping someone cross the street, bringing their groceries out to their car for them. It's just these just really small acts of kindness that really help, that bring more compassion and love into our lives, and being able to do something for someone else makes you feel good.
Now I'm just on the soapbox that I'm on all the time, and I apologize to loyal listeners who've heard me say this shit a million times, but the world, as ugly as it may seem when you're on Instagram Reels, is actually, for all the suffering that's out there, it is a target-rich opportunity for boosting your own happiness by being useful. And It doesn't have to be running into a burning building. It can be helping somebody across the street, having a kind word for strangers, whatever it is. There's a ton of data to show this is all good for you, and not for nothing, good for the world. That's a theme of this conversation, actually. I think the line between good for you and good for the world is much fuzzier and blurrier, much more porous than we think.
Yeah. I mean, we're all so connected to our phones and walking around with our heads down. And, I just make this conscious effort to put my phone away. I know you've heard it dinging a couple of times, but, besides that ding, to really just look up and meet people in the eye and look at them and just to connect. I love that my kids, they see that I am talking to people that I don't know, or, connecting with this person who was bagging our grocery, whatever it is. It's just about like conversation, like real life, like just people are not used to having conversations with anyone anymore. So even just talking.
It sounds to me like this grenade that landed into your family's life may have cracked you open and made you more engaged with the world in ways in which the previous anxious version of yourself might not have been.
Yeah, I think my anxiousness sometimes just keeps me in my own way. And Bruce would always tell me, Emma, you got to get out of your own way. Like, I just have been so fearful and so protective of me and the family and the things and everything, where it's like the balm has been very helpful for me to go the complete opposite of feeling isolated and sheltered, and I don't want to share my story, and I don't want it to get out, and I need to protect Bruce, and I need to now I've gone the complete opposite of that. Now I am sharing our story to be able to help someone else. I go to these FTD events so I can connect and be in and hear someone else and what they are going through. It has really just opened up my world completely. I felt like I was walking around with blinders on, sew up my own ass, like you said, and now it's like the blinders have been taken off, and it's like I see the world, I appreciate the small things, and I don't take it for granted. I just don't. And it's unfortunate that this grenade had to go off in my life, in our family's life, for those blinders to come off. But again, that is the reframe. It is seeing that it hasn't all been bad.
One last reframe I want to ask you about. You mentioned this a little bit when you talked about the fact that joy is still present in your home. A friend of mine who's kind of my age, not the type of person you would expect to say what I'm about to say to you. He's a finance guy my age, hard charging investor dude. But in his early 20s, his mother got brain cancer, and he cared for her right up until the end, did the hospice care himself. And when my parents got sick, he said this thing to me that at first it kind of felt like maybe just kind of empty words, but really, really stuck with me. And this was many years ago. He said, try to see if you can find the sweetness in it. I wonder if those words resonate with you.
I'm always trying to find the sweetness in it. And there has been. Again, you don't realize that when you're trying to get to a diagnosis, or you're puzzled and you don't understand what's happening to your person. It's just, there's no sweetness in any of that. There is, again, joy. There is laughter in our house, and there is sweetness that we have been cracked open to. Our house isn't all sad and it is not all filled with grief all the time. It is absolutely there, but we have found a balance to enjoy these sweet moments that present itself to us. And we are so open to see it. And I'm so grateful that we get to see it. Again, it's not all bad. It's not all great, but it's not all bad.
Final question for me. I've resisted saying any of this or asking this till now, but I grew up watching your husband in Die Hard and all of the sequels and Moonlighting, and he kind of was the avatar of masculine, cool with a both. He could shoot the bad guy and also be really funny. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker, and all that other stuff. And so I'm just curious, like, how's he doing now?
All things considering, I think he's doing very well. It's a triggering question, actually, because sometimes I just don't know how to answer it. He is doing well. My husband is not in any pain. He is doing okay with a really hard diagnosis.
Well, apologies for asking a triggering question.
Oh, no, don't. Okay. I mean, everyone asks me. And I love that they do. I love that you ask because I want you to ask. It's just sometimes hard for me to answer.
Well, when people ask about my dad, who's, pretty far along in his dementia path, what I can say with some confidence is he seems happy. Is that would those words roughly apply to Bruce?
Yes, absolutely. Content, very present, very in his body. It's really quite fascinating to see, actually, for someone like me, so out of my body most of the time, to see someone so in his body, so present, not worried about what happened yesterday, what's happening tomorrow, just grounded. It's actually beautiful to witness because when we are with Bruce sitting with him, holding his hand, we are in that moment with him. Mm-hmm. I think he, to me, I feel like very content, very present. And I would say, dare I say, happy.
Well, it sounds to me like the way he's handling this is probably the most badass role he's ever taken on.
I was going to say that. He's handling it like a badass that he is. 100%.
Well, I will say, because I'm not sure you can or would ever say this about yourself, but the way you're handling this is pretty badass. It is not easy to caregive, and it's not easy to go public and talk about it. So I appreciate you doing that. Before I let you go, can you just remind everybody of the name of your book and any other resources you've put out into the universe that we should be aware of?
It's called The Unexpected Journey, Finding Strength, Hope, and Yourself on the Caregiving Path. The book is full of resources and really helpful, tangible ideas that I hope will really care for the caregiver. I have a website, which is emmahemingwillis.com. And on this website now, I'm adding in resources for caregivers that are either starting this journey, on this journey, where they can come and sort of poke around and see if there's an organization that might be helpful for them. I have a blog where I am inviting experts and specialists and other caregivers to be able to share their advice, their tips, their caregiving stories, which I think is really important to be able to hear from other caregivers.
You got a lot. Emma Heming Willis, thank you.